In this video, Uncle Adam's got 3 pro tips for you.
Warning, Uncle Adam is not a professional. He's usually not even very good. Try any and all of Uncle Adam's pro tips at your own risk. Void where prohibited. Uncle Adam is not actually an uncle.
Still putting off getting a haircut for safety reasons. Still wearing the fez for, safety reasons. It's been over a year since I did a Uncle Adam's Pro Tips, and I had a couple little ideas, but none of them seemed like a full-blown kind of episode of Uncle Adam's Pro Tips, so I'm going to mash them all together, and here you get 3 of them. Metallic paints make things look metallic pretty easily. You've probably heard of non-metallic metals, which is using non-metallic colors to make something look like it's actually chrome, shiny, gold, whatever. And that's cool, but it takes a lot of work. I'm a big fan of actual metallic paints usually because they go by pretty quickly. Metallic paints are paints that have got actual tiny little pieces of metal all ground up inside there, and that's what makes them kind of reflect the light. The issue is that many metallic paints that you can buy from a lot of different hobby brands, they're real thick. They're real thick. And if you don't want that to be the case, if you don't want to have super thick, chunky kind of brush strokes going through it kind of metallics, what do? Well, I figured out a while back, I don't know what made me think of it, but I was just like sitting looking at all my paints, and I'm like, I was working on this big turkey here, and there's a lot of trim, and I was not, after doing the gold, I was already like, I don't want to do all the rest of the trim on this big bird, and because it just takes like layer after layer, and then going back and trying to fix up, brush strokes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I want to do the trim on the wings to be silver, and then I've got a forge fiend that I got to do next. I got to find a better, thinner, but still opaque paint color, and as it turns out, the airbrush color. Now you might say, Uncle Adam, how is it that you are able to airbrush, on just the raised parts and not get any down inside? Well, because I didn't use the airbrush. So that's the trick. Just because they make airbrush paint doesn't mean that you have to put it through your airbrush. Airbrush metallics, many of them, not all, but many of them. My favorite currently is this one, Chrome. This is from Vallejo Model Metallic Air, that line, and it's called Chrome, and it is a spectacular color. I've not found a situation in which it doesn't cover in just one coat. It is super opaque. It doesn't seem to leave, brush lines. This is not a sponsored video. It's just one of my favorite. When a paint, when you can hear that kind of fluidity, it's generally an airbrush paint because they're thinned down. But for whatever reason, these particular colors, and there are probably other airbrush paints out there that are metallics as well that will probably also do this. Your mileage may vary. Find yourself the paints that you like, but look for the, I don't want to say thinnest because they're not thin, but look for the most fluid airbrush style metallic paints that you can find, and then just use those, and you will find yourself really happy with the results, and you can get through the maddening amount of trim that you may have on different types of chaos vehicles, let's say, or chaos anything, let's say. You'll be able to get through a lot quicker and save your sanity. I'm a big fan of kit bashing as of late, and I've been doing more and more of it. And there are times when you are not following any instructions because you're making it up on the fly, you're putting your parts together and you're doing all these things, where you will put a piece together and then look at it and go, nope, that's not working. And at this point, you've already glued it. So the tip here is if you use super glue / CA glue instead of plastic glue. One of the reasons that I don't like to use plastic glue is because of this very tip. If you use super glue, you can unglue what you've glued. You kind of can't really do that too much with plastic glue. When you are using plastic glue kind of almost welds the plastic together. It melts both sides, and when you and it's a whole thing, and it's very strong bond. When I'm using terrain and stuff like that, I have a tendency to use plastic glue, but when I'm painting little tiny people that I've been kit bashing and things like that, and I get done and I'm like, you know what, I hate that gun. I hate the way that thing looks. There's just something not right, or that head position's not right, or whatever. You can unglue the model. Now there's a couple of different ways to do it. One is to take the entire model and put it in the freezer and leave it maybe a couple of days, overnight at least, but you can leave it for longer. At that point, the glue will brittle up, and then you'll be able to actually just sort of peel things apart. You might have to be a little careful and kind of go kind of slowly, but you can pop the parts apart. The other thing you can do is use something called a CA debonder. So this is made by, I don't know, Great Plains or somebody. This is the only bottle I have. And again, not an ad, but it's just what I've been using for years. And it smells a lot like, it smells just like fingernail polish remover. So it's probably got a lot of acetone in it or something like that. So don't get it in your eye, don't start it on fire, that kind of stuff. But you put some where the join is on your model and then let it sit for maybe 5-10 minutes and then just start to kind of slowly worry the part. Which worrying something is just kind of not reefing on it, but just kind of slowly back and forth until it pops off. And then, clean all the material off and maybe grind away a little bit of the glue with an X-Acto blade and all that kind of stuff. And then you're kind of done. Like you can, you've completely deglued. Don't get it everywhere, because then you're basically going to have to clean it all off if you want to try to prime that model. So try to be sparing with it, but you can deglue, CA glue, cyanoacrylate, super glue, and then you can put a different gun on there, or a different sword, or a different head, or different backpack, or whatever, and it helps you a little bit more with your kit bashing, so you're not so constantly completely analysis paralysis, like should I do it this way or should I not, and all that kind of stuff. Glue it on there, see what it looks like, and if you don't like it, unglue it. Lastly, edge highlighting is kind of hard, honestly. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm no pro painter, certainly not, but it takes some time. And very frequently it is super easy to screw up, by the way, because I have found personally that just the whole concept of taking that little tiny brush and just sliding it perfectly along the edge that you're trying to highlight, sliding along is fine, but if you push down a little bit, now your edge highlight gets wider, and if you pull up a little bit to overcompensate, your edge highlight gets narrower, and now you have this sort of wavy edge highlight, and that's kind of difficult. The main way that I get around that frequently is to just dry brush things a lot with a big honkin' makeup brush. I talked about that. Ciao. And it works great, but sometimes you need to edge highlight in just certain areas, not the whole kit and caboodle. So what do you do? I use pencils. Now, you can use a lot of different types of pencils. If you are trying to edge highlight the edges of a metal object, let's say some sort of tank or something like that, and you want it to look as if it's very worn, actually like a straight up number 2 style pencil, if you just rub it along those edges, will kind of give it this darker silver, almost kind of glinty look to it from the graphite in the pencil. So that's not a bad way to do it. Another important thing to think about is watercolor pencils. You can get these watercolor pencils. They're like colored pencils, but they're watercolor based. The benefit to those is you can actually blend a little bit with them. So you can draw a line along your edge and then go back with literally a wet piece of piece of paper towel if you want to, or even just a wet brush with no paint in it. And then you can just kind of wiggle back and forth along the edges and make it so that the color that you want along the edge is brightest in the middle and then kind of fades out towards the ends. And that's the benefit of using the watercolor style brush. There are also companies out there like AK Interactive who make edging or edge highlight brushes or whatever they want to call them. They're used sometimes for weathering, sometimes they're used for all kinds of different things, and they can also work in a lot of situations as well, and they come in all kinds of different colors and materials and things like that. But just because you see people online all the time who are edge highlighting with a brush doesn't mean you've got to do it that way. You don't have to necessarily go that direction if you don't want to. You can definitely try to use something else like a regular pencil, watercolor pencil, or one of those kind of weathering style pencils and get the edge highlighting that you want and get it very focused in just the right area. Hopefully these tips are something that you can use in your future hobby endeavors. I just wanted to mention that I'm starting to do some stuff on Twitch. You can go to twitch.tv/tabletopminions, and I've been doing a little bit of taking a paint break sometimes after my hobby, stuff is happening at home and I need to rest my eyes, and so I play video games a little bit, but I'm going to be doing online Twitch hobby stuff quite soon. So give it a follow and take a look.